a couple years ago, I had this thought. I was really, in my early 20s, really starting to develop, or so I thought, started to read, started to consume, self-help, self-development books. And I remember a guy named Jim Rohn was my real first exposure to it. I'm sure if you've consumed anything, then the Jim Rohn, more of a old school kind of self-development guy. I don't remember the book was called, 7 Strategies for Success, something like that, right? And at that time, that broke me through, and it felt like I'm sure you can attest to this experience, just that you feel like you found this new world, and he's like, oh my God, that insight there. Oh, wow. The mindset is the key to life, and all the things, right? Awaken the giant within. And you can feel like you're progressing. But then over time, especially if you've been in this space for quite some time, you go to the seminar and you get the next course and it's the next book. And now you're an avid discusser, right? You can go to any book club and oh yeah, I've read The Science of Getting Rich. Oh yeah, I've read and you've read everything, right? And at least for me, going back to the story, I had a moment where I looked up. I remember I was maybe 22 at the time. And this principle that I'm about to share with you got developed. At the time, I didn't crystallize it. This was just a hypothesis. But having worked with God knows how many guys, thousands at this point, it's safe to say that this is an actual phenomena called the simulated self. The simulated self. Previously called the projected self for those who have introduced this principle to before. But it's the phenomena that states that we can feel like we're progressing even though nothing in our life has changed if we do certain things. And one of them is reading. So let's get started with the simulated self. What is the simulated self? What is the self? We could go in that direction, but we're not going to. So the simulated self, we have to start with a contrast. So if one self is simulated, then there must be what's called the actual self or the real self, right? I'm going to keep this very simple. So if we have something called a simulated self, we must have a polarity, something that defines it, right? We can't have black without white. We can't have up without down. So we can't have a simulation without reality, right? So the simulated self is a creation of the actual self. So if you're somebody who got into self-development, usually we go towards things that are self-development was a solution for you, which means that if it was a solution for you like it was for me, that means you had a problem. So the question is, what kind of problems do people usually have when they gravitate towards self-development, right? Assuming you didn't just get a book from your grandma or something. Usually, one of the big ones is procrastination. Struggle with, dang it. I know I'm supposed to do something. I intend to do it, but I never do it now. I always go later, right? It's going to be key. What's another one? Of course, we could list a million of them, but what's another one? I want to stop having a low confidence. Let's say low confidence, right? And we're intentionally keeping the self vague here because we could go down a rabbit hole of that. But we'll just add another one here just for the sake of it. So procrastination, I know I struggled with that. Low confidence in my early teens, I struggled with that, especially when it came to dating, right? Approach anxiety, I'm sure many men either suffer from now or are suffering from or used to suffer from, right? Or have a challenge with, let's not call it suffering, right? Because you may have chosen to keep it. So low confidence, procrastination, and let's throw in there anxiety. Just throw anxiety as a whole, right? And so, man, I have these negative states. My actual self has a bunch of negative states. And I feel and notice these things, let's say 90% of the time. right? I may have 10% of a little bit of happiness, but 90% of the time, that's what it feels like. And so we go, okay, well, this is pain, right? This is painful. I need a solution. If you see me looking now, this is my little marker kit. I've been looking forward to using these. I had these colored markers forever and I don't use them. Well, I do use them, but only for laboratory work. So I'm excited to be able to share this with the actual audience finally. So, simulated self, right? So pain. And so now let's use green for this. I feel like green is so associated with positive change. And so we're over here and we want to go and improve ourselves, right? We want change. I want change, right? And so we assume, okay, if I want change, let's pick one of these. We're going to create a simulated self right now. We're going to pick one of these and say, I want to change my low confidence. And what is confidence? Let's stick to definitions here. Confidence is simply how likely do I think I will be to succeed at something I do. So what that means is when I get up in the morning to brush my teeth, I don't have confidence issues on whether or not I'll be able to do it successfully. Why? Because I've done it successfully many times in the past. So I have a memory of getting exactly what I want out of the situation. Whereas if there's something, let's say back in the day when I used to have approach anxiety in terms of interacting with women I was attracted to in my, let's say late teens, right? I had low confidence in that particular thing. I may not have had low confidence in other areas of life, but when it came to that particular thing, I didn't have a high degree of memory of success. So when I simulated or imagined, right? So an imagination is the same thing as a simulation, and that's going to be really key here, right? Imagination and simulation, the same. So when I simulated the interaction with the woman, I was unable to see a positive outcome. I was unable to see a positive outcome. Why? Because I didn't have a lot of data to work with of success. And worse, if you had a lot of data of failure, that's going to affect that even more. So if I wanted to go, okay, well, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to go to, self-development, right? Then this assumption is that the reason I'm failing is because I lack this thing right here. So if I say right now to you in the camera, hey man, we're going to do this right now. Go talk to that girl over there. Right? You're going to freeze. Why? You're going to say, I don't know what to say. In other words, you don't know something. That's the problem. You don't know. And so we go, okay, well, the reason I can't be confident is I don't know how. And I go, okay, that's a reasonable thing. So what's the next solution? You need to go find knowledge on how to get confidence so you can know how, correct? And so in that pursuit, you go and get books, courses, YouTube videos, right? And so because you think the problem is not knowing, then you're an intelligent fellow, or I was going to say feltress. What would be the female version of a fellow? Fellas. Yeah. But you're an intelligent fellow or young lady, right? So you're like, I need to solve this with I need to solve this with a knowledge problem. I need to fill my knowledge gap. My knowledge bucket is running low on water. And so you go, okay, this is the assumption. This is the theory, right? There's a certain threshold of knowledge. This is a hose right here pouring into water, right? We're going to call this their knowledge source. And the theory is that, okay, I'm going to fill the knowledge thing up. right? So we have 1 book, then we go to 3 books, then 6 books, then 12 books, and I'm filling it up. And so now you start to fill it up and it starts to overflow. Oh shoot, you're on your 20th course. You're on your 37th YouTube video. And so you hit a particular threshold where you go, You notice 2 years have passed. And you go, I have a PhD on confidence. Yet, whenever I'm in a room with somebody, my chest tightens and I can barely speak. So the question is, how is this possible? You solved the problem. You can probably explain how confidence works on a nervous system level, right? Better than most people who've never taken a class. Better than most people who have taken a class. More than most people who've whatever the hell, right? And so it's like, what? That's what it is. I need more. Clearly, I don't know enough yet. And so we go, let me put 2 hoses of knowledge. And the knowledge bucket is just overflowing at this point. And so now it's 3 years. You look up again. Nothing has changed in my life. I'm not more confident. Because how do you define confidence? It's the ability to get the outcome you desire. You don't want confidence, you want the outcome. You don't want confidence, you want the outcome. I didn't want confidence. I wanted beautiful women to want me the way I wanted them. And the thing I thought was preventing that was my lack of confidence. So I wanted confidence because I thought that was the solution. And so I was like, well, if that's the problem, then I need to get knowledge on how to solve it. However, and this is the big thing that creates what we talked about, the simulated self, right? The thing about the simulated self and how it got created, at least for me, and what I began to notice, right? The simulated self is something that I imagined. I simulated. I took the moment and I went, what if I was confident? What if, and this is always where it starts, every simulation starts with the same code. What if? What if? And so it says, what if I was confident? And then we run the simulation. So this is, I'll use me. This was me right here. And I'm running the simulation. And I'm like, man, if I was, it'd be so great. Right? Yeah, this is me right there. Oh my God, right? And so I run a simulation of what it would be like if I solved this problem. But here's the trick. This is where I got, and where many people get got, is that they presume, let me get a better marker here, is that we assume that this is the blind spot here. Every piece of knowledge I acquire gets me closer. And that is simply, I wouldn't say it's not the case, but the blind spot is it has a limit to it. And so it's like, okay, what are you talking about? I mean that in this reality, I was going, okay, I just read another book on confidence, which means that when I see the girl, magically I'll feel more ready to be able to do it, because now I know what to say. I know to say, hey, blah, 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 blah. And so when I see them, I'm like, oh, I'm going to just know what to say. And the problem was I didn't know what to say. Until you see the girls and you're like, oh God, I'm going to do it later. I'm going to do the next one. And then boom, just like that, 2-3 years go by. Huh, that's odd. Wasn't it a knowledge problem? Don't you know enough by now? Clearly not. And so we go, okay, it's what I don't know that's preventing me. But the truth is, every actual result produced in life is not only because of what you don't know. That's one part. But it's also based on what you can or cannot do. It's not just what you know. Knowledge is also what you need to be able to do, skill. And these are often conflated, but these run on two different intelligence systems. This system is what we call the adaptive intelligence system. And I do mean intelligence. It is responsible for all our real-time, this is key, problem solving. Real-time problem solving, real-time responses. So this is where every skill goes. No skill is fully conscious. No skill is fully conscious. So even driving a car, let's use riding a bike because that's where we're going to be going with this. Let's say that I said, okay, I had a friend and I said, hey, he said to me, hey, I want to get better at riding the bike. I want to learn how to ride a bike. And I said, okay. I said, okay, well, I'm going to shoot you a link, the place I get my bikes at, right? Or tell him the store that I get my bikes at. So he goes, okay, next time I see him next week, I was like, how did the bike go? Man, I bought one. And on top of that, I bought a course. I bought a 7-week course on how to ride a bike. I said, okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. It's like, even better, it's by the best guy in the world. Okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. Let's get on the bike then. And it's, oh, whoa, I'm not done with the course. And so he goes, when I'm done with the course, then we'll start. I said, okay. And so 8 weeks later or 7 weeks later, we link back up and I said, okay, great. It's been 7 weeks. You ready, bro? He said, I was almost ready. But then I found out they had another course, right? There's a higher level of coursing. This is the quantum physics of riding the bike, right? And I put that example because it illustrates such a fundamental principle that when we take it out of the context of what we're used to, it makes it very evident. How much knowledge does that person have to acquire before they're ready to ride a bike? How much knowledge does that person need to acquire before they're ready? Well, according to them, they needed at least 4 months of knowledge. And so you're looking like, that man didn't need 4 months of knowledge, man, get on that bicycle. And then he goes, I realize I have such a passion for riding bicycles that I'm going to go to undergrad for riding bikes. And I think I'm going to get my PhD in it. Right. And so 7 years go by, 6 years go by, and he got his PhD in riding bikes. And so now he has a doctorate in riding bikes. Right. And so I'm like, man, it's been almost 10 years, but I'm glad we're finally there. And when it comes time to hit the bike, he scrapes his knee. And come to find out he's no better than the 4-year-old right there that doesn't know a dang thing about the theory of riding bikes. And so what we just realized is that knowledge and skill have two different systems of intelligence. This is what I call let's keep it consistent here. The analytical intelligence system. So we have the adaptive and the analytical. The adaptive is responsible for skill acquisition, right? You can't go, well, you need to put your hand on there and then, put it at a 90-degree angle and then it's way too much to process. So the adaptive system allows us to acquire and compress knowledge into very short activities. So it just is learning it adaptively in real time. How to motion our body to do that particular thing. Whereas the analytical is useful when it already has data on the subject matter. So if he decided to take the course on biking after having some adaptive knowledge, when he's looking through the course, you go, I see where I messed up. Okay. Because now the order goes experience, then analysis. But if we go knowledge, we could say knowledge there, then attempt or experience. The problem with this is that because there's no experience, it's impossible to know where we need to stop and start and what we need to know. That's why that guy got trapped getting a PhD in riding a bike. It's impossible for him to know where to stop. It's impossible. How can he know? He's never had he has no context. You can have secondhand knowledge. Go, I think this, but that's also somebody else directing his action. But if we were to isolate somebody and said, okay, do this activity, and they go, all right, the reason I can't do it is because of what I don't know, then they're going to study infinitely. They're going to study infinitely. But not all information that can be learned, and I had to learn this the hard way. Not all information that can be learned is relevant to get to the objective. So him learning about the different types of tires, when he wanted to ride a bike to ride around his neighborhood, the 47 different types of tire material don't matter as much for him. But now he knows it. But it's useless information. Whereas perhaps somebody who actually has a tire shop, who consults people going and doing the Tour de France, that's relevant for his objective. But he can't know what's relevant for him until he's on the field. And we're like, okay, actually I don't need to learn this. Why do I need to know every tire type? And so that's the beauty of the adaptive infused with the analytical. And that's the fastest way to progress. Experience and then analysis. So going back to confidence, right? Needed that foundation. What's the problem here? The problem is, what was the bicycle guy doing? What's the self-development guy doing? Right? The bicycle guy is running a simulation of the version of himself he would be when he'd be able to ride. The confident guy running the simulation, I was running a simulation on what I think life will be like. And so I kept going. Every time I learned something, it got me closer. But as we just proved, the guy went to a PhD level of riding a bike, and it didn't get him any closer because it requires a completely different intelligence system to actually get the outcome. If you want to actually be able to do something, yes, knowledge is required, but how you You could say integrate, incorporate, or go about the learning makes a difference. And so, as I was talking to someone about this recently, I asked them, what's your objective? Mental stimulation, which is what stories do. They allow us to simulate a universe. So, if the objective is to simulate a version of yourself, but not actually ever live it, then keep reading. Keep reading only, I should say. But if the objective is to actually be able to obtain and experience the thing, then at that point, strategy going to have to change. We're going to have to actually act, reflect, then adapt. Act, reflect, adapt. Act, reflect, adapt. Not study, prepare, and then when some magical threshold, when I have a PhD on it, then I act. That is impossible because you're running a simulation based on no data. That would be the person going, I know exactly when to stop studying even though I've never ridden a bike. I know exactly when to stop studying even though I have no data on how that thing works. But wait, but it's secondhand information. Okay. How much secondhand information did the guy need before he knew how to ride a bike? Is there ever a threshold he will hit where he's read just enough that he can ride the bike without ever touching the handlebars? Think on that question. How many books would he need to read? And this is coming from somebody who was a chronic simulator. Right? Especially if you have the ability to. And so, what does this mean in the grand scheme? We'll wrap the video up here. What this means in the grand scheme is that if before every action, before every change from pain, right? So if right now you're experiencing something painful, you're like, oh, I need to plan to, right? Yeah, we're going to start when I read the book, right? If before every action, you must run a simulation, then you literally are living in a simulation. Because the bulk of those years, remember 2-3 years, were spent upgrading someone that does not exist. How do we know it doesn't exist? Where are the results in your life? Simulation. And so the next book will be to upgrade this simulated self. We add on a bell and whistle. But what if I had muscles? And what if I had this much money? And simulating the possibilities. How many more years? How many more degrees? How many? How many more universities, research studies would that guy need to absorb before he's ready to ride that bike? That's something to consider. So, the simulated self. How you actually, the objective, to close this out, is not to create a simulated self that you become. It is to bring the simulation into actuality. It is to bring the simulation into actuality. And the only way to convert the simulated reality into actuality is through activity. There's no other way. But don't overwhelm yourself with activity, right? It is, if you could say, a small amount of theory, could say just enough to go, okay, I'm not just banging my head against the wall. If somebody's there that can guide you, then go for it, right? And then once you have the minimal dose, then act. Then you're going to get feedback. Then you're going to reflect on the data you just got. And then you're going to act again. But you're going to be better this time, even if it's 1%. However, if I start here, right, we say small amount of knowledge. If I go, well, no, I can't act until I know enough. And I go, oh, I'm going to use my own simulation of a reality I've never experienced to determine how much knowledge I need to have arbitrarily. And then I'll go to step 2. But if this is prioritized, this beautiful thing happens. You get to see exactly where it's not working, and then you know exactly what to go learn. If you learn before you act, then you'll never know what's relevant. And I had to learn this the hard way many times. Consumed by preparation and planning, and I was living in a simulated reality. And years would go by in that particular area. And I look up and I'm going, whoa, nothing has changed. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And so I hope that at least one person watching this video will have left the simulation today. But if not, I'll see you next time. Be wary of the simulated self, y'all. Enjoy your day.